What's up, guys? UFC 241 just wrapped up and solid card. Not the most finishes, but the fights were excellent. A lot of back and forth stuff, a lot of changes inside fights. And speaking of changes, we got to talk about that main event. Stipe Miocic TKOs Daniel Cormier 4 minutes and 9 seconds into the fourth round. So Cormier was starting out very strong. Cormier was kind of doing the same thing that he was doing in the first fight. He was talking a lot that Stipe might be doing the same things, but it was really Cormier that didn't really change too much. I mean, he was doing the same thing. He was trapping both hands, trying to land a jab behind it. He was throwing leg kicks from the outside, marching his way in. Just in this one, he was coming in with a little bit more power from the outside, right? Overhands, left hooks, looping punches. But there was a major speed advantage for Daniel Cormier. And Stipe was kind of sitting in front of him unusually. It was almost like he was shocked by the speed of Daniel Cormier's punches. And it was clear Daniel Cormier was faster. Stipe was trying to land that right hand. He was trying to land that 1-2. Cormier was pulling on the jab, moving away from it, and then ducking under the right hand. He was leaning to his right, the thing he got caught for against John Jones. But Stipe really couldn't find the opening. Like I said in my prediction video, that lean to the right from Cormier works very well against Stipe because Stipe doesn't really throw much else besides that 1-2. And that was pretty much most of what he was throwing until I think it was the third round he started throwing more uppercuts. He was catching DC here and there. As the fight was progressing, Stipe was getting stronger. He was finding more openings. He was doing a lot better. And the fourth round, I mean, can we talk about one of the greatest changes mid-fight ever? I mean, Stipe Miocic was having a hard time. He was losing almost every round. He was doing pretty good in the third, but he fired a left hook to the body, and Cormier did not defend it. And you saw Cormier make the face like he was in pain, the face of pain. Stipe just kept going to it, right? He threw one more to the body, caught Daniel Cormier again, and what this also does is, it doesn't allow Cormier to trap the hands. When he traps the hands, because he's so much shorter than Stipe, he's actually reaching so far up that his ribs, his liver, his body's exposed. So he can't even reach for the hands anymore, and it makes him attack from a distance, which is very risky, right? But Stipe went for it twice, caught him both times, and then he went up to the head and caught Daniel Cormier. I mean, that's some good targeting, man. Mix up to the body, right to the head, and that's usually how you can get knockouts. And it actually happened. And that's why I actually hurt Daniel Cormier at the end there. But Stipe kept throwing it, and DC had almost no answer for it. Only one time he threw, I think, a right hand right over it. He got hit by the body shot, but he also hit Stipe over the top. But every other time, DC just couldn't block it. And then eventually, it conditioned him to put his hands down, and Stipe went with a 1-2 right over the top and just kept going with it. And DC was stunned by the first one. By the first right hand, he was seeing some fuzz, and you gotta give to Stipe Miocic. He was down 3 rounds, most likely. Came back, found a chink in the armor, and the hole was so big, that's all Stipe needed to find. Imagine that, just one opening, the body shot, the left hook to the body, which is actually something John Jones was landing on DC a couple times. That was the only vulnerability Stipe needed to eventually finish off DC. Stipe has high fight IQ, man. To change his whole approach mid-fight, 3 rounds down. I don't even know if his corner said anything about it. I know Cormier's corner was telling him to take him to the ground, wrestle a little bit more. He didn't really do that too much. He had that one slam, which was pretty nice. But that was mainly because Stipe was pushing away from DC, and then he eventually went in closer. He closed the gap between them to get under DC and lift his head up. But that's when DC was able to get under Stipe with his hips and lift him, right? But at the end of the day, man, Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight of all time. This cements it, in my opinion. 2-time heavyweight champion, most title defenses in UFC history, probably has the strongest competition out of any heavyweight ever. How can you even argue this? The only thing would be Fedor because of his streak, but Fedor did not fight this level of competition. I mean, let's be honest here. He had a long streak, 10 years, which is very impressive, but that's really all he has going for him, right? It's a fun debate. I love Fedor. I know people are going to argue for Fedor Emelianenko. Personally, he's my favorite heavyweight of all time, but the numbers don't lie. The competition doesn't lie. And he's in an organization where they're having stellar drug testing, and he's fighting the actual best fighters in the world, back to back to back to back. Now, who these guys should be fighting next? For DC, I don't really know. Is he going to retire? I don't know. If he isn't a heavyweight contender, I mean, if he's going to stay a heavyweight, he has to stay a heavyweight. I mean, the 205 division is a little bit too much of a cut these days, I think, for him. He came a little bit light for this one, but still, 237, going down to 237, might be a bit much to get to 205. But who I like to see him fight next? Probably JDS or someone around that level. It doesn't really matter at this point, just some top contender, because Francis Ngannou has to be fighting Stipe, right? That's the fight for Stipe. The rematch with Ngannou. Ngannou has beaten everybody. There's nobody left. So let's do Francis Ngannou versus Stipe, and DC really fight anybody at this point? I mean, that was a pretty bad loss in terms of, just the actual finishing sequence. He got hit a bunch of times, and Stipe was putting it to him. He did not allow DC to get his wits about him at all. He just got punching and punching and punching. DC was out of there. So, great win for Stipe Miocic. And then we're going to go to the co-main event. Nate Diaz defeats Anthony Pettis by, I think, 30-27 on 2 scorecards and 129-28. I don't know how you can give it 29-28, really. The first round was close because Anthony Pettis was connecting with some good counter right hooks moving backwards, and they were stinging Diaz. Diaz seemed a little bit slow, man. His boxing, I can tell, was a little bit of rust in that. Now, he normally doesn't take orthodox stance, but when he took the orthodox stance and he threw the right straight, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was a bit sloppy. I mean, kind of just winging out there, no real snap into it, no real good form. His southpaw stance was decent, but he was still slow and sluggish. It was a little bit weird. In the clinch was where Diaz shined, and it showed Pettis still has that vulnerability, man. RDA really exposed that. I think Clay Guida back in the day kind of exposed it in the beginning, but Diaz just pushed him up against the cage, landing knees, landing punches, take him to the ground with that single leg was so nice. I don't think Pettis expected that. I think Pettis expected a striking battle, and Diaz would not try to take it to the ground. That's why I think it was, and I think he got shocked by that takedown, and now he has so much to worry about, and by the time that takedown happened, Pettis was already gassing. He was already fading in the fight. Diaz was starting to get tired too, which is a little bit weird. Not as much as Pettis, but Diaz said the fact that it was a 3-round fight, he kind of blew his wad really fast in that first round. He went after Pettis initially, and I think it was a little bit too much, right? But I think ring rust affected Diaz a bit. When he came back to fight Michael Johnson, he looked so sharp, so fast. His punches were so snappy. His defense was excellent. In this one, he was getting caught by some counter right hooks. There was a couple times it looked like he was wobbly a little bit. But as soon as he found that clinch, as soon as he started working, as soon as he got Pettis to the ground and he made him look like a purple belt, I mean, people were kind of bashing me that I said that Diaz was ahead of Pettis in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, it showed, man. The fact that Charles Oliveira got Anthony Pettis back as easy as he did, I mean, look what Diaz was able to do. That was my point. The fact that Charles Oliveira was able to get that dominant of a position on Pettis, what is Diaz going to be able to do? And he was able to control almost the entire fight on the ground, besides a couple times where Pettis got out of the back take, circled on top, and got into the guard, but he really didn't do much from there. He almost got triangled, I think, at the end of the fight and stuff. Diaz is so high level, man. His boxing seemed a little bit sloppy. Everything else seemed very good, man. And that point where he stunned Pettis, those knees against the cage, Pettis was tired, and then as soon as 2 of those knees landed, he started crouching forward, and you could see he was hurt, man. He put his head to the cage so he doesn't get kneed anymore, and eventually he just fell to the ground. I don't think he got knocked down. I don't know if they're going to count as a knockdown. He was definitely rocked there, man. Definitely rocked. I'm not going to lie, I was so excited when Diaz was going for the finish because he doesn't normally get that kind of finish, does he? And against Pettis, who has the chin he has, who knocks out Anthony Pettis? The only guy that finished Pettis by strikes was Max Holloway, but there were a lot of X factors going into that one. This one, I mean, we're talking about a rejuvenated, surging Anthony Pettis, who's just coming off a knockout against Stephen Thompson, almost getting finished by strikes against Nate Diaz. Nobody would have expected that. But great win for Nate Diaz, man. Huge star, biggest pop of the night, obviously the biggest draw of the night, and he called out Jorge Masvidal. Sign me up, man. Telling him that, Jorge Masvidal is the only other gangster in the sport, but he's not a West Coast gangster. Jorge Masvidal was loving it, man. That's obviously the next fight. I mean, come on. Jorge Masvidal's a big name now. It would do massive. It could be a pay-per-view main event. It really can. It can sell very, very well. I don't know what UFC 241 would draw, but if I would have to guess, I would think Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal as a pay-per-view main event. It would probably draw at least 500,000. Oh, but there's ESPN Plus. I forgot about that. That makes it a little bit harder. I don't know. In the old days, it would do at least 500,000, I think. But that's obviously the next fight. Who do I favor in that one right now, off the top of my head? If it's a 5-round fight, I'd probably lean Diaz. If it's a 3-round fight, I would lean Jorge Masvidal, but I would think Masvidal has a better chance of overall winning. You know what I'm saying? So I would say he has a higher chance of winning a 3-round fight than Diaz does winning a 5-round fight. And even in that 5-round fight, I think Masvidal can do a lot of things, man. I mean, he has great leg kicks. He has great boxing. He has great takedown defense. He's not going to get taken down. I don't think so. If Diaz shows to be sloppy like he was against Pettis, I mean, you can't even show an ounce of that against Jorge Masvidal. He'll take your head off, man, because he is not slowing down. There's no rust in his game, but it should be an amazing fight. And that's another thing I want to talk about as well. Diaz, even though his boxing looked a little bit sloppy, he actually made adjustments. He was checking kicks. Well, he checked one leg kick that I think discouraged Pettis from throwing any more because Pettis was obviously hurt from it. He threw a hard leg kick. Diaz checked it. No more leg kicks. And what did I say before this fight in my prediction video? This fight came down to two things. Can Pettis establish leg kicks? If he can, he would win the fight. Can Diaz press and force Pettis backwards? If he can, he might win the fight. What happened? Pettis could have thrown more leg kicks in the first round, but once that check happened in the second round, leg kicks were out the window. Right? Diaz made the adjustment, he made the improvement, and he was forcing Pettis backwards, and he won the fight. And as for Anthony Pettis, who should he fight next? I would actually like to see a rematch with RDA. I just want to see how that fight would go nowadays at 170. And then we go to Paulo Costa defeating Yoel Romero by decision 29-28 on all scorecards. Some people say a robbery. I do think Yoel Romero won the fight, but I do not think it was a robbery because it was close. I mean, the first round went to Costa most likely. It was a close round because they both dropped each other. Costa might have been more of unbalance rather than him actually getting hurt that badly. But Romero seemed to be definitely hurt in that one. The second round was super close. I think that could have went either way. I give it to Romero because he got that last takedown, right? It was so even going up to that. Romero getting the takedown, I thought that's what won the round. And then the third round was obviously Romero. I mean, he was putting it on Costa. And Romero did a very good job of getting into Costa's head. You saw at the end of that third round, Costa wasn't doing anything, but he was taunting back at Romero. Romero, every time he got hit, he would kind of taunt Costa, right? The young, brash fighter, the overconfident fighter. It's going to probably get to him, man. The veteran Romero, he was doing his thing. But there were a couple times in that, I think it was the third or second round, I can't remember. Romero made it look like he was hurt when he got hit, but he really wasn't. He was kind of playing with Costa. And it possibly could have swayed the judges to give it to Costa, thinking that he was hurt, you know? Could have backfired. I was saying that live. If he doesn't knock out Costa, goes to a decision, it could backfire. He might regret doing that. But at the end of the day, Romero was super wild, man. And I think the reason for that is he was very uncomfortable getting pressured that heavily. Costa fights like he always does. Put the pressure on, put heavy leather on you. And Romero seemed to be a bit uncomfortable, winging punches, spinning all the time, losing balance all over the place. But he's so athletic. At 42 years old, he's still so athletic. He can rebound, get his footing before Costa's able to even act. But one thing Romero was doing very well in the fight was he was constantly switching stances and throwing that jab. And you could see it was confusing Costa. Costa had a hard time dictating how to get in once he started to see Romero switching stances in front of him. Because that jab was always ready, right? Romero was popping him in the face with that jab, blooding him up a little bit. But one thing Romero was getting caught by was that left hook. Costa's left hook is so good, man. The form is perfect. Amazing power. I mean, the power these two took from each other boggles my mind. I don't know how these two were able to land the shots they did on each other and neither of them really getting hurt to the point where they're about to get finished, you know? Yeah, they got hurt in the first round, but like after that, the continuous punishment these two are putting on each other, and they just kept going forward and they kept throwing strikes. Insane, man. Absolutely insane. Romero took another head kick from Costa, and Costa was eating back fists and lunging left hands, lunging right hands, and walking them down again. Madness, man. Madness. I thought Romero was going to win this fight for my prediction because I thought he would wrestle a lot more. Whenever he did wrestle, he was kind of getting the better of Costa, right? But I just wish he wrestled a lot more. It might have been because he might gas himself out and he didn't want to do that. But he ultimately did play Costa's game. He struck with him, stayed on the outside, stayed on the cage, and that's where Costa wants him. So Romero was kind of fighting an uphill battle this whole time. I think going to the wrestling would have established a win for him, in my opinion. But it's a major step up for Paulo Costa. He's going to be a force against anybody in this entire division. I mean, imagine having 4 fights in the UFC. Your 5th fight is Yoel Romero, and you compete with him almost evenly the whole way through. You got to give this young guy credit, man. But who these guys should be fighting next? As for Yoel Romero, it's a loss, but I don't think it's going to hurt him too bad. I don't think he should fall in the rankings, honestly. I mean, it was a close fight. It just shows Costa's that good. But who would I like to see him fight? A rematch with Jacare is probably the most ideal. I mean, that first fight was extremely close, controversial. A lot of people thought Jacare won. I think running that back would be excellent. They're both older, too. And as for Paulo Costa, he waits for Israel Adesanya to fight Robert Whittaker, and he would most likely be up for the next title shot, right? Beating Yoel Romero pretty much warrants a title shot, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the path he's been on in the UFC is crazy. I mean, going from fighting guys like Johnny Hendricks and Uriah Hall to then fighting Yoel Romero and then fighting the champion, it's a crazy path. But he showed he's good enough to fight Romero, compete with him, he should be good enough to compete with the champion. So I think Paulo Costa is going to wait this out a little bit, and I think he should get the winner of Whitaker versus Adesanya, as Kelvin's going to be fighting Darren Till. I don't think the winner of that should get a title shot. And Jack Hermanson is going to be fighting Jared Cannonier, so that's out the window as well. And then we go to Sadiq Yusuff defeating Gabriel Benitez by first round knockout, 4 minutes and 14 seconds. It was kind of a mirror matchup, right? They're kind of doing the same thing to each other, opposite stances. Benitez landing that left hand actually hurt Yusuff badly with it. Benitez usually didn't have the greatest defense when he ever threw that left hand, but he really fixed it for this fight. And Yusuff had a hard time finding the counter initially, but then he did. He pulled back, I think, on the straight of Benitez and countered him with a hard right hook, man. That was pretty much the end of it. So great win for Sadiq Yusuff. He's my prospect for 2019. This fight against a veteran Benitez, it's a good showing for Yusuff. Did get rocked, but ultimately got the job done in the first round. As for who he fight next, it really doesn't matter at this point. Maybe like a Kyle Bochniak, Kyung-Ho Kong, who also won tonight. Someone who's outside the top 15. Don't rise him too quick in this stacked division, you know what I'm saying? Then we go to Derek Brunson defeating Ian Heinisch by decision. I think it was 29-28 in all scorecards. Heinisch came out there guns blazing. He came out there to run right through Brunson just like he said he was going to try to. Landed a devastating leg kick, then cracked him with a high kick that seemed to be, the beginning of the end. Derek Brunson grabbed the body lock, eventually got his wits about him, recovered. Veteran experience, man, it matters. It makes a huge difference. Knew where to stay, how to control, and how to recover most efficiently. And eventually started landing some good left hands here and there. Heinisch was missing a lot. There was a lot of punches getting whiffed in this one. I mean, especially as the rounds kept going, both got extremely tired. Heinisch was getting a lot sloppier. He was lunging with that right hand, lunging with the left hand, switching as he was doing it, going for takedowns, which was very good. I like to see that. I thought he was going to do that in the fight because there's really no risk of doing it against Derek Brunson because Heinisch does have amazing submissions, even if he gets taken down or reversed or something. But ultimately, Derek Brunson just landing a couple better shots here and there, catching with some long left hands as Heinisch was making his way in. And yeah, good fight. Not the best fight of the card, but solid fight. I think Derek Brunson, still being a top 10 fighter as he always has been. I think he should fight the loser of Jack Hermanson versus Jared Cannonier. I think it probably makes the most sense, or even the winner, because everybody else is pretty much booked. And then we go to Kama Worthy defeating Devontae Smith in the first round, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. The odds are crazy. Not only was Devontae Smith a giant favorite by the time I did my prediction video, he was a 7-1 favorite at that time. He rose to a 10-1 favorite by the time the fight happened. What? I did think Devontae Smith probably would win because Kama Worthy has been shown to get cracked a couple times. His defense isn't the greatest, but this one, he progressed. He talked about it, and he showed in the fight how many improvements he has made in his career. He said when he used to train with Devontae Smith, he is a completely different fighter, and he thought Smith wasn't that much different. And it showed in this fight. Devontae Smith didn't show anything too different. Long right hand, long 1-2, and eventually it caught up to him. I mean, as soon as he went for it, as soon as the engagement happened, Kama Worthy pulled back on it. The punch scraped him and landed a big check left hook and put Devontae Smith out, man. It looked like a sparring match, I'm not going to lie. Especially from Smith's side. I mean, he didn't really try to do too much. A lot of leg kicks. They were laughing together, slapping hands. It really looked like they didn't want to hurt each other. But Worthy talked about it constantly before the fight, that he tried not to get into that mindset. Where Smith seemed like, Kama Worthy's my friend, he was a little bit too friendly about it, and it may have caught up to him for that. I know people got paid for this one. And then I did see a little bit of Corey Sandhagen defeating Rafael Sunsao by decision. I saw the scrambles on the ground. I saw the second half of the second round and then the third round. Sandhagen did a really good job on the ground with Sunsao. It seemed like at a distance he was controlling the range really well. Sunsao really couldn't land anything, and Sandhagen landed a couple good kicks. The real thing that impressed me was his scrambles with Sunsao. I mean, neither were really getting the better of each other. It was really exciting to watch. No real dominant position was taken. It was insane. I don't even know what to call some of those positions. They were just wrapping each other up like pretzels. But good win for Corey Sandhagen to defeat a guy like a Sunsao, who's been a top 3 fighter forever. Sandhagen is up there for a title shot, but with guys like Frankie Edgar coming down, most likely going to fight Aljamain Sterling, who should be next for a title shot. And you also have Jose Aldo talking about going down to 135 pounds, and he deserves a title shot over Frankie Edgar. And now you got Corey Sandhagen, who's up there as well, asking for a title shot. You got Petr Yan asking for a title shot as well. And Henry Cejudo has to go down to flyweight. Man, is that a logjam. But great card. Leave a comment below what you guys saw of the card, and what was your favorite moment or fight of the entire card. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. For my next video, I'm going to make a breakdown of one of the fights this weekend. So be looking for that. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.